So, welcome everyone. I hope you can see me well. We have a little bit of a storm going out on the outside, and I got a little bit carried away in this update. That's why I'm a little bit late. Okay, welcome everyone. Nice day in Dresden, Germany. Sun is shining. A little bit of a storm. The oak is sometimes clicking against my window, so don't be afraid when this happens. Today I want to continue to look at Neo4j drivers. So last time we looked at Spring Data Neo4j and all the new things that have been happening there. So the code went up to GitHub. So if you want to play around with what we did last time, you can find this here. And so there's also the video online. So if you go to YouTube Neo4j playlists, sorry, not live, but playlists. We looked at Spring Data Neo4j. So we don't want to do an inception, of course. Playlist, there's an Twitch catch-up playlist, which should already have all the videos there. So Neo4j drivers all the things, and also the SDN one is here as well. So last week we started to look into drivers, and we talked a little bit about the approaches, the existing drivers for the different languages, and I want to show you two things that I did since then. So one is or two things that happened since then. So my colleague Adam did also his Twitch stream on yesterday, and he was actually looking into building backends for web development with TypeScript and Neo4j and Nest.js. And so something that he did on Tuesday was he built an application for this real-world example here. So there's a real-world example which is like a blogging app, like Medium or so, and there's a ton of front-end implementations for these, as you can see, for React, for Angular, for Vue, and tons of other things, and also a ton of back-end implementations, including Spring implementations and Node implementations and so on. And Adam actually built two of them. So he built one in where's it here? Neo4j Examples. Neo4j Examples. And I think he will also put up a blog post about this as well. So if you go to the Neo4j Examples repo organization, you will find a Node.js version and a Nest.js TypeScript version of the backend. So it has, I think, 17 or so URLs. REST API endpoints, so that he implemented, and now you can use Neo4j as well as a backend to this real-world application as well, which is pretty cool. And what I wanted to do today is actually to look at the other examples that we have for Neo4j and the drivers. So something I started a long time ago was this really simplistic example project that has a simple, uses the movie dataset and has a simple one-page jQuery. You even see the old Neo4j logo. One-page jQuery app that talks to a backend which has a bunch of endpoints. One for searching for a movie, one for displaying a single movie, and one for rendering the graph. And the movie data model is, of course, really simple. Person acted in movie, and it's really simplistic. So there's no React, there's no Vue or so, because back then they didn't actually exist, I think. And it has, as I said, it uses a search endpoint to find this list of movies. It has a movie with the title endpoint for displaying a single movie, and a graph visualization with these three, with a graph endpoint. And so what we did back then and over the time is we implemented this application for a lot of different languages and drivers. And so we could then demonstrate how to use the different drivers of that. And for a long time I wanted to update those to the most recent version. And what I want to do today is actually, together with you, see how far we get in updating first the Java one and perhaps then some of the others to a newer version. So, the Java one is also in the Neo4j Examples repository. It's called Neo4j Movies Java Bold and would look like this. And we use Spark Java as a web framework, which of course it's really nice. It's like Sinatra and Ruby, and we use the Java driver for that. You see we also need to update the README here and some other things. Okay, so, and without further ado, please let me also know where you're from when you're watching, so we'll see how far and wide our spread goes. So I already cloned the repository. And I have here the latest version is from June, updating Spark Core, but actually the last updates have been quite a while ago, right? So what I want to do is basically see what can we do to update this to the current version. So if we go open this project in IntelliJ here, we see the basic setup for this project is we have a web app with a single index HTML where we need to do some updates, which we'll do in a second. And then we have a Java service basically which runs a movie server which gets its web port and a Neo4j URL. And then starts a movie service which serves these 3 endpoints, and with the routes we map the 3 routes that I mentioned, movie title, search, and graph, to this movie service. Right, and we use JSON to render them to JSON. Okay, and this movie service then calls an implementation of an of an Cypher executor. Sorry. The Cypher executor is just an interface which returns an query result based on a query and a parameter set. I had these query executors because originally I had several implementations of those before we had Bold, so one HTTP and one for embedded and one for JDBC, but we simplified this to have only a Bold executor now. So the interface is kind of a little bit in vain now. So we need to upgrade this project. So of course we start by doing the POM first. So something that we want to do, of course, we don't want to have a 3.0 snapshot here anymore. So it's 4.1 now because we want to be 4.1. The GitHub URL is still the same. And we want to use Neo4j 4.1.1 and also the driver for 4.1.1. So the 4.1.1 driver as well. And then if we now try to build this project, it will break in a lot of places. And kind of going over that will also help us to see what changed in the driver since then. So one thing that changed is the driver packages changed from using v1 as a package name to, let's see, let's just update this, from v1 as a package name to not having v1 here. The other thing, the config with encryption and so on is now handled via the URL, so we can remove this config bit here, remove v1 here as well. And then the rest looks okay. The other thing that I want to change, I used to have an iterator here, but actually what I want to have is I want to return a list because the session run method actually returns a list here. So I just do return session run this, and we turn this into a list. So we just change the result of this to a list. So we also want to change the interface. So, and that should be all that we need to do in this Cypher executor, I hope at least. So if we compile this, should be fine. Now we can look at the movie service, which is the place where we need to do most of the fixes. So we see some things have changed. So Neo4j collections iterators don't exist anymore. Neo4j collections map off doesn't exist anymore either. So we had this map function, which was basically just calling map off. And we can just replace this with Java 11's. Oh, we should probably also change the Java version to Java 11. Let's do this as well. And refresh this. No. Now in movie service we can basically just replace the map thing with map off. I could do a refactoring with a method because we have multiple parameter counts, it's not. So we just replace map with map off, right? So, and we can also replace collections empty map with map off. So the Neo4j iterators we don't need anymore. So let's start on top here. What do we need to change? So here was iterator single on null. So we just get the list back from the Cypher query here. And if when the list is empty, we just return an empty map. Otherwise, we return the first element of the list. Right, so we just want to have a single movie here. And here it says as collection, but because our list is already a collection, we don't need to have this anymore. So that's also good. And here this is not an iterator, but a list. Or because we're in Java 11, we can just say var. And then we can turn this into an oops. Oh. So, and then we have this. So it complains a little bit about nodes and objects. So we could just say this is a list of maps, but for now I leave it like this. So that's this. Let's see if we still have any compilation issues. No, this looks good. So what I did then in our movie server, we get a Neo4j URL from an environment variable called Neo4j URL. And so what I did here is a run configuration. I just set this movie server with bold : / username : password at host, and so we can just use this, and I have just Neo4j desktop running with a local movie database here that I just created a few minutes ago. So this is my local test database that I can run here. So, and if you run this as a server, let's try this. It starts out, which is cool, and then we can look at our local thing here, and it doesn't show anything. So something seems to be broken as well. So what we can do is, of course, we should fix this image URL here. So it is moved a little bit around, so we can go into our index.html and fix this image, because that's now in Neo4j documentation. Or actually what we can do, we can use as the image something from neo4j.com style guide, which is an CDN provided logo, this one. so we don't need to host it ourselves anymore. Okay. So this should be nice. The place we had points to should also be updated because I want to go to developer example project and open it in a new place, so we can do this as well. So it goes to the page that we looked at before. And then the other thing doesn't show any data, right? So it's something that needs to be broken here. So let's see if we can see what happens here if we load this page. So we get some 500 errors, right? So here something is broken. Here response says internal server error, but we don't see the actual error. So what we can do here, we can go into our movie service, look into the graph bit, and see. We can also just start this with debug and see what's wrong. And if we run this again, we should see here that it's running the query, and then it runs into an error, and it says as the error, the parameter syntax. Right. So in Neo4j 4, this parameter syntax changed from curly braces around a parameter to dollar parameter. So if you say dollar limit here, and probably in the other ones as well, dollar part and dollar title. So the parameters are now dollar signs. So that should have helped. Let's see. Rebuild this, reload, and reload this. Oh, and the graph is showing now. So the graph is at least rendered, the other stuff is not rendered. And we see there's another error 500, so we need to see what's wrong with the other endpoints. So we can do the same here for the search endpoint, just add an breakpoint. And if we go into this, we see the error that the lower function is no longer supported. Okay, we used to use lower here, it's called toLower now, and here also toLower. Sorry. So if we fix this, then reload classes, yes. Oh, I should probably remove the breakpoint. So now it shows our movies here, and here shows also the crew of the or the cast of the movie. So for instance, if I search for something else like Cloud Atlas, I can also find this. The image is broken as well, so in our index HTML we need to use a different base URL for the image, which is now Neo4j documentation.github.io. So if I load this again, it should show the movie, right? Super. So what we haven't done yet now here is we have not updated the README, so that's probably something we want to do as well. Which now it should say it uses the driver version RC2, fun, good old times, 4.1.1, and it uses this connection URL, and then here we need to use the new parameter syntax, and then driver session run singleton map result as next. Okay, so this should still work. I think, at least. Let me just see. I think the type of the result has changed to just result and not statement result. Yeah. So this is now result. So, oh, and we should probably also fix this here. Neo4j download, play movies command, and exec Java should run this, and then we can say Neo4j URL equals bold colon Neo4j colon test or secret at localhost. Or what I want to show you is that we can actually add a Neo4j plus s at movies colon movies at demo neo4jlabs.com / movies. So that's something I want to add, is kind of support for remote URLs. So that's something we don't have, and we also don't have transaction functions. Last time we spoke about transaction functions, and of course this is not a transaction function. So let's change this. So instead of session run, we want to do session read transaction, because this is kind of our, these are all read queries. So we can just use a transaction and say tx run instead. So instead of doing session run, we just pass in a lambda that takes in transaction now and calls tx run on this, right? So it's basically the same code as before, just with a lambda delegating to this work. That the session delegates this read work to this lambda, and we can have as many tx runs inside of the lambda, but the whole operation will be retried if something breaks here, right? So that's part number one that we want to change. And I just want to make a copy of the movie server. I call it just remote, and change the environment variable here to what did I say? Neo4j plus s at. I can probably copy it from the README so we don't make a mistake. And check that this URL actually works. I just realized also something else that we need to change. Okay. This is our URL now. Oops, not localhost, but what happened here? Okay, Neo4j plus s. Why is this so small? Should be much bigger. So Neo4j plus s movies colon movies. That's the username and password at demo neo4jlabs.com / movies. Oh my god. So. And this is not an official bold URL, so we kind of sneak in the username and password here and the database. That's something that we need to extract ourselves for later use. So that's kind of sneaky a little bit. Okay. Okay. So if you run this, it will probably break. But let's see what happens here. So we just stop this and start this, and when we start this, let's see what will happen then. Okay, it says invalid Neo4j server URL. Okay. So in our movie service, what we used to have here at the beginning, it says create cipher executor from this URL, right? So, and we used to replace bold and so on with HTTP to get user info. So that's something that we probably need to extend. Extend to some other. Also add Neo4j plus S or SCC. Oops. And this is an optional thing as well. Plus S or plus SCC. We just to extract the user info, and then we that's our temp URI, right? HTTP URL, and we get the user info. Oh, let me inline this again. So this is our HTTP URL. So it's a little bit sneaky. So you can also pass this all as individual environment variables, of course, right? So, oops, as individual environment variables. But I don't want to break this bit here. HTTP URL. So we have the user info, and we get the string database is URL get path. Right. So, and now we can pass the database here as an extra thing, or if database, and then we should probably create a new URI from what we had before. So what you can do is user info is the auth thing. We just replace auth with plus colon by nothing, and we replace the path also with nothing, so that it doesn't complain anymore. What is its problem here? Oh, we need to change the signature. So this is kind of our board URL. And then we change the signature of the board executor to add database as a new that's our database, and we create a field for database, right? Or yeah, we need to create a field for database. So because unfortunately session config for database, so we can pass the session the database only to the session, not to the driver, unfortunately. So if we create a session, probably put this into a method here. Get session, and we say if database is null or database is empty or it's blank, and then we just return driver session, else we pull the database from here, right? So that means we can now also select a Neo4j for a database as well. Okay, and if we do this, then hopefully my test here should work against our remote database. So it gets it doesn't complain about URL anymore, which is good. And now if we open our browser with our app, it hopefully should use that. But it complains about something. So we need to see what's wrong here. So so the path has a slash in it, obviously. So in movie service, URL get path, and then if database is not null, then database then and not database is blank, we just replace it, remove the first character. It's probably something that we can do nicer, but unfortunately the path has the first slash in it as well. So it's something that we should make this whole thing, we should do nicer, or actually pass these things as the individual environment variables. So if I start my server again, hopefully now it works. Let's see, yep. So now we are running against our remote movie database. Right. So that means in the README we can say this is how to get started with Neo4j in Java. It's a very simple web application. Graph detail, binary protocol. Of a result, it's not statement result. We can select a database to run against of a currently the user or the credentials and database are passed as part of the URL, which is not an official feature, but just handled within this app. So note. So web application, Neo4j Java driver, developer manual. We probably need to add the driver manual as well here, or we just point to Neo4j.com developer Java for the driver. D3 Neo4j server 4.x. With multi-database, and then we have these endpoints, and Java collections, binary protocol, and we add the driver, and then each driver has this, right? And I guess that we should probably also adjust this example or I don't know. Actually here we need to have the curly brace. Run locally, clone this, build a server, and then you can just Neo4j desktop in Neo4j desktop. Open the URL and then open Neo4j browser, which is part of desktop. After logging in, install the movie graph by enter and play movies. Hit the run button, start the application with Maven compile exit Java or without database demo server. So you can probably say run locally with our online demo server. You can test this application with basically this. Or better, you can run Neo4j locally, so you can to experiment with your own data. So, and then we can use this. Super. And that's kind of needed of updating a really old version of an example application to 4.1. So having done that, we can now basically commit this. And now you should all be able to just pull the same example yourself from Neo4j Examples. And we should have these changes here online as well. Right, so if I just run this from our command line after I stopped our server here, we should be able to run this locally here as well. Oops. Something broke. Compile exit Java. So it has exec Java movie server plugin. That's really interesting. It says it starts the demo server, but then it ends it. Movie server, so is init, and then routes, and movie routes, and then Spark application init, but then it's not serving locally, right? Then we probably need to change this. Oh, it does. Interesting. So it needs to be. Is it running? Okay. Seems to start it in the background. Interesting. Not blocking. Oh, it. I see. It was running in the background, and I Cool. This works now. Really nice. So, and now we could do something similar for the other languages, right? So if you look at Neo4j examples, there's for instance in JavaScript. There's for instance a JavaScript example as well. This one, which we could update as well. Right? So this was also a really long time ago, and if we clone this, it's probably very similar to update them. So actually that's a good thing. If you're interested in this, perhaps you can help us updating these examples to the new versions. So it's more like a community effort and not just me or us doing all the work. So if you're interested in helping us here, they are like for all the languages. So if you look at Neo4j examples and we search for movies, then we see there's the Java stuff, there's something in Python, in JavaScript, in Go, in Python, in .NET, in JDBC, .NET Bolt, and so on. So we should probably have this as a joint thing that updates these things to the new version. That would be really cool. So if you want to help, please feel free to help us with this. So let's quickly have a look at the JavaScript one. I just cloned it. Movies, JavaScript bold, and this. The other thing that I wanted to show you actually is since we spoke last time, I actually spent some time upgrading these examples on the Neo4j graph examples. And now here, for instance, in the movies graph, the code tab has all the languages updated to the latest version. So if you look at like the Java example, you see that you can run it now with Java class path example, and it uses session config for database and read transaction cipher run. And so we can now start to use all these things for all the languages in the sandboxes and so on. So that's something that I have to do next, is to update the sandbox code examples as well to show online. But so this is now in the generator in template, so we can now generate these for all the examples. So if you want to check them out, what we need to change, so we can actually look at the JavaScript one here, for instance, what we need to change for the 4.1 update. So if we look at this, we have probably an index.js somewhere or an app.js. Require Neo4j API. Okay. Neo4j API.js. This looks more complicated. Load dash and movie model and movie cast model. Why is this so complicated? That's very weird. Okay. So this search is for movies, so we should also use dollar here and probably here as well. And use to lower. And for the graph, we need also to use dollar limit. So that changed, and this should not have changed, I think. This is kind of just regular expression things, and this uses fxql, which we should probably change to something that takes it from the environment. And we should probably use not v1, right? So npm install and then npm run project probably, right? npm run start. So let's see if this npm. Oh, we should probably also in package.json check what Neo4j driver version. So it's also I think 4.1 or something like that. Okay, let's see npm install. And in Node it was like process env, right? Yeah. So we just get process env for the environment variable, right? So that means in Neo4j API.js we can say var URL or const URL these days is process env, and then we say Neo4j URL or localhost var user is password is this, so, and this is secret test or something like that. This is Neo4j. Neo4j user, Neo4j password. So user pass URL. So okay, and 8 vulnerabilities which we should definitely fix. So npm start. So it starts the server, and if we go to our URL, what port does it run on? 3000 or something like that, right? Or 3001? No. Neo4j API and app.js. Function render graph. Search movies. But that's not the what I wanted. Webpack dev server. This is just app.js. But all these functions are client-side functions. That's interesting. Render graph. That's really weird. Somewhere the test is start server, right? Does it say somewhere it runs Webpack server? Does anyone know of you where Webpack server default port 8080 as well? Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. So we just need to edit the index HTML and Neo4j documentation, and somewhere here we have developer example project and Neo4j documentation. Okay, and we need to change the post URL as well. It's probably in app.js. Show movie, Neo4j documentation. So Webpack rebuilds it and then should. Okay. So this was simpler because in JavaScript there's all like the type system stuff is not in there. So the only thing that's not in here yet is the database. So we can basically say var database is Neo4j database, and movies is our default database, and then we can say in session actually we should probably not default to movies, but we default to Neo4j, and then we say database is database. So we can just create a session like this, and then it should use this as well. Yep. And then if we change this to Neo4j UL is Neo4j plus s at demo neo4japps.com. Neo4j user is movies. Neo4j pass is movies as well, and Neo4j database is also movies, and hopefully this should also work. Right, so if I stop my local database, it should still run because it's now running against your remote database. If I didn't break it. Oh, I broke it. So it's obviously not running against the remote database. So we need to see why it's not taking this on Neo4j API.js. Neo4j UL, Neo4j user, Neo4j pass, Neo4j database. So Neo4j UL, Neo4j user, Neo4j pass, Neo4j database. npm start. Does it not say so? It's really weird. It cannot connect to. Oh, I think I know what the problem is. That it's the remote URL is an HTTPS URL, and this is not an HTTPS URL. Oh no, it's connecting using both localhost Neo4j database Neo4j. Because it's running in the browser, not in the as a node. Oh, now I understand it. It's actually not really a node app. It's just a client-side app. Okay, that's of course not so nice. Okay, we would need to change this, that it has like a connection dialog here. Okay, that's something for later then, I guess. So I'll leave this to later to change this these bits here as such, because it does not use process info, of course, because it's running in the client. Right, so we should have a connection URL input field that we use instead here. Right. Okay, so that's something that we need to adjust. Good point. So it was the wrong repository that I cloned. I meant to clone the one for Node, for the Node backend. Movies, Node. Here's the Express one. Isn't it? But that's Webpack, that's not Express, right? This is the one that I just looked at, right? That's just a browser driver, not the... Okay, I think I'll need to fix some stuff here. Yeah, just change the whole thing from a Node app to an... Oh no, it is a... Okay, so it's not a Node app, but it's an Webpack. So I need to edit this with an Webpack in browser. Okay, so that's definitely something we need to change because I really want to have a Node backend one. Hi Flying Meat. I guess that's it for today. Hope this was interesting and we got at least one repository updated, the Java one to 4.0 or 4.1. But if you want to help with this, feel free to pick another one and update it to update it to the new stuff. Right. Cool. Hey, thanks, Daniel. Yeah, refactoring is something I like to do quite a lot. But we should, of course, make it nicer because there's a lot of ugliness still in here. So that's definitely something that I wouldn't want to keep. So this whole URL thing is probably something I should kind of move away from and instead just have environment variables for the three things. I think that's better. Cool, thank you all. Have a good day. Talk soon. Bye bye.